Hey everyone, and welcome to the Defining Your Life podcast, where we focus on living in our purpose, practicing presence, and activating our power in each moment. I'm Marsharelle, your resident pep talk provider, and I invite you to join me as we continue to learn, lift each other up, and strive to level up together. Because we are never finished defining our lives, and it takes a village, so let's build one. Stay tuned for the episode. Hey everyone, I hope that your week is going well and that you have been able to incorporate some new restful practices in your daily life. I have been very intentional about taking the time that I need to rest, even when it feels awkward. It's a new muscle and it takes time and repetition to strengthen it. And sometimes it feels like I should be doing something else with the time I've carved out, and I have to remind myself that I, like so many of us, have conditioned ourselves to believe that we are being lazy or unproductive if we aren't doing something that the masses consider valuable and necessary. But we know that's just not true. Taking care of yourself and honoring your mind and body are some of the most important things that we can do, no matter what anyone says. So I hope that you have been very busy resting. Remember how I said I like to crochet? Well, my kids requested I make them teddy bears, so I finished those this week. No deadlines, just leisurely stitching. And the result was rest and connection. A win-win. You would think they wouldn't care about such things at 8 and 14 years old, but it does make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside to know that they still want to hold on to something that I created for them. Anyway, I would love to hear how you rested this week as well. So drop me a line so that we can continue chatting about our restful practices. Now, because I want us all to go into 2023 feeling more powerful than ever before, I'm continuing with this power series through the end of the year. And this week, we are going to be talking about the power of vulnerability. Over the last few years, I have come to realize that I am hardened in some ways. At first, I wasn't particularly sure what triggered this. But upon further review, I concluded that while I thought this was a new occurrence, this hardened version of me had been traveling with me for quite some time. I just recently became more aware of her and then gave her more power. And so I stopped being as open with my feelings and emotions as I once was, or maybe I only thought that I was open. Oftentimes, we subscribe to the narrative of toughening up because we are told to. But the challenge with toughening up, in my experience, is that it makes it harder to tap into those soft, gentle, inviting parts of ourselves, and we then lead with the toughness all of the time, therefore boxing out those other very important pieces of ourselves. As someone who has a strong connection with words on paper, when I was writing consistently, I was more vulnerable. But that was actually because I was able to write down how I was feeling and disconnect myself from my emotions and view what I had created as a body of work and not my actual feelings. So there was a buffer there. That was easy for me to write down my emotions and sculpt them in a way in which I wanted to present them, carefully crafted with just the right words. Not that much different from Instagram and how we curate what folks see. Anyway, I was confident in that space. I trusted myself, and still do, to arrange words on paper, just so to form a clear picture of my feelings. What I found, though, was that the same confidence I hold on the page, I lack in my voice without the assistance of the written word. This is part of the reason that I am able to share freely on this platform. I have the opportunity to gather my thoughts first before sharing them. And I still struggle with being faced head on with conversations and situations where I am required to share my feelings and opinions on the spot. I run in circles thinking, are the words going to come out right? Is the person going to understand what I'm saying or misinterpret how I said it? Was I offensive? I wish I'd said it this way instead of that way, and now it's too late. Oh, the agony of pondering all of these different scenarios. Cue shutdown and evasion. I'm retreating as quickly as possible. And with all of these different scenarios swirling around in my head, I often find it easier to just not share, even though I know that there is great power in sharing. Now, I think those that know me would say that I am fairly transparent for the most part, but I know that my transparency still lacks the vulnerability that comes with expressing how I feel about what I've shared, if that makes sense. Can anyone relate to that? When we avoid the feeling part of things and simply deal matter-of-factly, no matter how transparent we are still operating in fear and protective mode because we are scared of that lack of control. We are allowing the unknown to run us while we are running away from outcomes that we have created in our own minds. Power lies in taking the reins of our own tongues and being able to walk, run, and dance in our own truth. There is so much beauty in being able to be who you are fully, and that includes opening up and sharing more deeply. Maybe you have a supportive partner, family members, or friends, but are still too scared to let your guard down even in these safe spaces. What will it take? Do you want to change? I know that I do. So here are some questions that I had to ask myself, and now I am asking you to reflect on them along with me. Are you vulnerable with yourself? Do you sit with your emotions? Are you honest with yourself about how you feel about certain things? Does it make you uncomfortable to do so? Because if you can't successfully be honest and open with yourself, there's no way you can do it with anyone else. How can we lay claim to our own personal stories when we don't confront the emotions that give life to them in the first place? It's like telling a story without any adjectives. It's going to fall a little flat. We bring color to stories, and that color comes from emotions. So we must face and embrace our feelings, first within and then with others. And we need the T word for that, people. You know what I'm talking about. Trust. I'm still working on unpacking all of this in my own life, but I have determined that any reason that I may have conjured up for why I am uncomfortable sharing my truest thoughts and feelings is trust. Whether it's a fear of being judged, misinterpreted, or whatever, it goes back to trust. I don't trust that the person will see my heart or will be patient enough with me as I unpack my thoughts out loud, and so on and so forth. It's a process. And frankly, we need to trust ourselves to be able to articulate our own feelings when necessary without being so worried about these fabricated consequences, of which the most anticipated one is betrayal. And if you have been betrayed before, does it mean automatically that it will happen again? Have you ever betrayed yourself by not saying or doing the very thing you knew you should do in the moment and then regretted the outcome? I have, but we have to forgive ourselves for not showing up in those moments and strive to do better. And the only way we'll know that we have changed is when we are confronted with a similar issue and see that we were able to show up differently. The same goes for trusting others. You won't know if you can trust someone unless you entrust them with something and see how they handle it. Is betrayal a risk of opening up? Of course it is. There is always risk. But guess what? Reward is also an option. So let's work on shedding fear and distrust together. Find your voice in spaces and situations where you aren't currently taking ownership. I'm not just talking about sharing intimate things. I'm talking about speaking up for yourself in the circles in your life. I'm talking about being strong enough in your vulnerability to voice how you feel at work or in a social group. Maybe you feel the need to share your perspective about the way something was handled and how it made you feel. And you want to be confident in your opinion and stand firm in it and defend your point of view. but you have to be vulnerable enough to have shared what you are defending in the first place instead of having no opinion at all to share. Try leading with trust and not skepticism. It will change your overall outlook. Now, one thing to note here is that you can still be very aware and cautious without being hardened. Let's not get carried away, people. I'm not talking about throwing wisdom out the window in our openness and sharing your innermost thoughts with just anyone all willy-nilly, okay? So you can still exercise caution as needed. But if you are listening and have a healthy relationship with vulnerability, please share. I'd love to know if it comes naturally to you, what tools you used if you had to work through it, and the power it has given you in your life. And if you are struggling and want to take a step towards vulnerability, please share as well. What is holding you back? And how do you need to be supported? We are all here to learn from each other. I want to end with this quote from Brené Brown, who has done extensive research around the power of vulnerability. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. Never weakness. How wonderful is that? A reminder of your power and strength even in your vulnerable state. The power you have to help yourself and help others. Let's all see what happens when we decide to be a little more vulnerable. I'm looking forward to the freedom of it all and the ability to help others by getting free. What about you? Send me a note, DM, or leave a comment on IG so that we can keep the conversation going. And if what you've been hearing here is beneficial to you, please remember to review, subscribe, and share the podcast with a friend. I can't wait to chat again next week. Take care until then.